Good evening. President Trump has announced that he is going to veto the current stimulus bill unless it includes a $2,000 direct payment to Americans. Nancy Pelosi appears to agree. Over in Texas, the governor is moving to put Austin's police force under state control. Now, over in Georgia, the signature verification audit for the 2020 election is wrapping up, and we can expect the results any day now. And over in Michigan, we sat down with the man who refused to certify the election results, and he told us about how badly he was harassed. Let's go through these stories together. This is your 2020 election update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Now let's start today's discussion by going over the relief package. Yesterday, President Trump announced that he will veto the pandemic stimulus bill unless it includes a $2,000 direct payment to Americans. In taking the action, President Trump said that
Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it.
So what he's referring to here are things like hundreds of millions of dollars being tagged for the Egyptian military, for Cambodia, for Burma, for Ukraine, as well as for gender programs in Pakistan, and so on and so on and so on. There's so much of it. We actually discussed it in yesterday's episode, and if you want to go through it, I'll throw the link here in the top right corner for you to check out. Now, President Trump asked Congress to update the bill and increase the ridiculously low payment of $600 to $2,000 per person, or $4,000 per couple. And surprisingly, at a time when Democrats and Republicans can't seem to agree on anything, Nancy Pelosi actually responded by saying that, at last, the president has agreed to $2,000. Democrats are ready to bring this to the floor this week by unanimous consent. Let's do it. Okay, so it looks like, barring any unforeseen developments, there will be bigger $2,000 checks being distributed in the near future. Right, there's been a bit of a development since the in-studio filming of that portion. First of all, President Trump has vetoed the defense bill, the $732 billion defense bill. Now, this is actually separate from the spending bill we're discussing, but since it involves the finances, I thought I would bring it up here. So basically, there were two main reasons he decided to veto it. The first one is that the bill failed to remove Section 230. Section 230 is, of course, the provision that allows companies like this, like YouTube, to be treated as platforms rather than as publishers. However, President Trump says that they engage in so much censorship that they are basically publishers and they should not be treated like platforms. However, that was not included in the bill. And then the second reason that he vetoed it is because it went directly against his foreign policy positions, specifically in regards to having American troops in Afghanistan, South Korea, and Germany. President Trump said that this provision was unconstitutional because Article 2 of the Constitution makes him the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. And therefore, he said that, quote, the decision regarding how many troops to deploy and where to deploy them rests solely with him. So he vetoed it. However, Mitch McConnell said that he will be able to override the veto in the Senate because there was enough overwhelming bipartisan support for this bill. The next step will be for it to be voted on in the House to see whether they can override the veto in the House and then the Senate. However, in regards to the spending bill that's right here, Nancy Pelosi is calling for 9 a.m. tomorrow in the House for them to have a unanimous consent request. Basically, they're going to ask everybody, all the House members, whether they consent to raising the stimulus payment from $600 to $2,000. And if nobody objects, it'll be done. However, if a single lawmaker objects, then it'll fail. The unanimous consent request will fail. And so we'll see how that turns out. Now, I wanted to show you this article from Bloomberg. So basically, Bloomberg News right here. They quote House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy as saying that Nancy Pelosi's measure will fail. Basically, she will not be able to raise it from $600 to $2,000. However, this only comes from a single anonymous source. So I don't really put too much stock in articles like this one from Bloomberg. However, you might read it online. You might read the headline, so I thought I'd just mention it here. So basically, let's see what happens tomorrow. By 9 a.m., maybe by 10 a.m. tomorrow, we'll know whether these stimulus checks will be raised from $600 to $2,000 or whether they'll need to go back to the drawing board. Okay, otherwise, Roman in the studio, back to you. Now, I want to take a quick moment and speak about this point a little bit dialectically, because just like everybody else, I'll gladly put another $2,000 in my own pocket. But here's a question. Is it right for the government to send money to people like this? Because first of all, we're already $27 trillion in debt. And second of all, this money that's going to be printed by the Federal Reserve is not free. Nothing is free. It's going to be paid in some way, shape, or form by our children, either in the form of inflation or through even higher taxation. And like I said, I'll gladly take the $2,000 just like everybody else. but I just don't believe that it's moral for the government to borrow against our future generations like this. That's just my opinion, but I don't hear many people talking about it. I'd love to hear your opinion though. Please leave your comment below this video and tell me what you think about it. Also, we here at the Epoch Times recently published a special edition report about the Federal Reserve. We talked about what it is, how it came into existence, how it works, and so on and so on. And I've actually been thinking about turning that report into a special segment for this program, because I personally believe that it is so important for people to understand how our money is printed, how the sausage is made. Please leave a comment below this video telling me if that's something that you're interested in seeing, because I'd love to make it. Now, if you'd like to read more about President Trump's rationale for his veto, as well as the next steps for the House to vote, I'll throw those links into the description box below this video for you to check out. And while you're down there looking for those links, take a moment to smash that like button. Every time you smash the like button that's below our videos, you are fighting back against big tech censorship, because you are forcing the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. Now let's move over to Georgia. If you remember, about a week ago, the Secretary of State in Georgia announced that they will be conducting a full signature verification audit of the 2020 election. Now, the governor of Georgia came out earlier today, and he announced that the results of the signature audit should be released either later today or tomorrow. Although tomorrow is actually Christmas Eve, which is now an official federal holiday, so I don't know if he took that into account. It might take an extra day. Regardless, it should be coming out soon. Now, the significance of this audit is that the Trump campaign estimated that between 38 and 45,000 illegal absentee ballots were cast in Georgia, which is far, far more than the current official margin between President Trump and Joe Biden, which sits at just about 12,000 right now. So in fact, President Trump wrote on Twitter that I will easily, quickly win Georgia if Governor Brian Kemp or the Secretary of State permit a simple signature verification. So now let's see what comes of it. Thus far, the results have not been released, but we'll look out for them either later today or in the next day or two. If you'd like to know more about the details of how this audit was being conducted alongside the University of Georgia, we covered that in an earlier episode, and I'll throw the link to it right here in the top right corner for you to check out. And now let's move on over to Texas. Earlier this week, the governor of Texas announced a plan which would place the Austin Police Department under state control. Basically, the proposed law would transfer control of the Austin Police Department to the Texas Department of Public Safety. So why is this happening? Well, the governor said that there has been a successful effort in Austin to defund the police force there, which has subsequently led to a rise in violent crime. Back in August, the Austin City Council voted unanimously to cut the budget of its police department by 1/3, which is about $150 million. Now, if you remember, that decision came as the response to a fatal shooting of an unarmed black man who was killed in a parking lot in Austin by police officers who were there looking for a man with a gun. But according to the governor, the defunding of the police force has led to a surge in violent crime in Austin. So this bill for the state to take over control of the police department is still in its early stage, and it'll be voted upon next month in January. If you want to read the details of this proposal, I'll throw those links into the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. And now let's head on over to Detroit. Do you remember a few weeks ago when there was all of that drama in getting Detroit's election certified? That was when the Wayne County Board of Canvassers was flip-flopping back and forth. You remember that, I'm sure. We talked about it actually in an earlier episode. I'll throw the link up here. Well, recently we got a chance to interview William Hartman. He was one of the Republican members of that board, and he initially refused to certify the results of the Detroit election because he saw imbalances in the numbers. Basically, in Detroit, they have these things called counting boards, and almost 71% of Detroit's absent voter counting boards did not balance between the machine count and the paper ballot count, and there was no explanation provided as to why that was. And so William Hartman refused to certify the results until these imbalances were worked out. And do you know what happened after he made that decision? Well, he told us that after he voted to not certify the results, when he was leaving the board meeting, he said that it was like mission impossible. Police officers advised him to not go home, and instead they escorted him with just the clothing on his back to a friend's house for safety. For a full week, he did not dare to go outside. Police were stationed at different locations just to make sure that nothing happened to him. Furthermore, he was tarred and feathered by local officials, such as by a local reverend, who's also the head of the local NCAA chapter, who said, "You have extracted a black city out of a county and said the only ones that are at fault is the city of Detroit, where 80% of the people who reside here are African Americans. Shame on you." Another example was a vice president at Wayne State University who said, "The stain of racism that you have just covered yourself in is going to follow you throughout history." Then the news media showed up in front of his house, filmed the location, and showed his home address, his personal home address, to the entire city. Then his personal website was doxxed, and he received over 1,500 hate emails. It got so bad that when he needed to get some clothing as well as a computer from his home, he had to arrange some local police officers to have an unmarked van as well as a couple of police cruisers to go to his house and pick up the stuff for him. He didn't even dare to go there himself. Can you imagine this? A man named William Hartman, he saw discrepancies with the voting numbers in a certain county. He says, I can't certify these numbers until we have an investigation and see why they don't line up. And then he is harassed so badly, including being called a racist on the city stage, that he eventually changed his mind and certified the results. I guess that's just the state of our republic in 2020, unfortunately. If you'd like to read his full interview and hear his whole story for yourself, I'll throw that link into the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. Lastly, with Christmas and New Year's right around the corner, if you're still looking for a gift for your friends and family, then I would highly recommend the Epic Times. Right now, we're offering a gift package, which includes this 2-part book series, How the Specter of Communism is Ruling Our World. I've read it myself, and it is awesome. It's a step-by-step explanation of how this ideology has infiltrated every facet of America's society. It also includes a giant poster called the FISA Abuse Infographic Timeline, which explains step-by-step how the FBI misled the FISA court in order to spy on Carter Page and, by extension, the Trump campaign. And it also includes weekly home delivery of the Epic Times newspaper directly to their doorstep, as well as a subscription to the online edition. It's an awesome gift that any patriot would love. I'll throw that link in the description box below this video so you can get it for them ahead of the holidays. In closing, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to this channel if you want to get honest news content delivered directly to your YouTube feed, and until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed and stay free.